Hi guys, this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about couples counseling, whether or not we're working with an individual or both, or the couple in a whole, which I do all of those. Not all couples counseling is equivalent, and I kind of discovered this in my own education. In fact, there's some studies that were done that actually showed that a lot of couples counseling is highly correlated with divorce, because when you're when you're making those I statements and the person on the other end of those I statements that's being bashed is your spouse, then sometimes that doesn't necessarily work. And even though there are a lot of things that seem very intuitive, they are actually counterintuitive, where we can use them in certain ways. For example, when we look at things like love languages, a very helpful metaphor, but there's not a lot of science on it, and there's very specific reasons that we can examine it and show why it doesn't necessarily always get people the type of relationship that they're looking for. So I am a trauma specialist. A lot of times past trauma and the way that we're attracted in relationships tends to have a lot of very familiar patterns. It shows up a lot. And I currently believe, and I have yet to see the science prove me wrong on this, that we're actually attracted to our mates because they give us every opportunity for healing our past wounds, childhood, past relationship, you name it. And normally the way they do that is they do it by triggering every single one of them in some way. It's almost like we have, complementary wounds of attraction that shows up. And when you understand that, when you understand that that is a part of the relationship, and I have yet to see this in any really successful relationship, that these things, these opportunities are coming, then there exists this really amazing opportunity for post-traumatic growth, where with whatever you're struggling with can then be a real reason to find a depth and a breadth of relationship that just it doesn't show up with your more superficial beginnings that a lot of us have in relationship. So it's a lot like a lot of other things. We start off drinking coffee, most of us anyway, with cream and sugar, and then some of us begin giving up the sugar. I still like the cream, but we move more towards the bitter, subtle flavor of life. Same thing with wine. A lot of people start with your Riesling or your sweet wines. Riunite Peach, I think, was one of my high school ones. But then now there's a Pinot Noir. There's something that's got a little bit drier to it. Same thing with our relationship. That there becomes an appreciation for what you've gone through, what you've been together with, that really has an ability to give depth to your relationship. So there's a lot of ways to look at relationship, and so when we look at empirically based methods of therapy, right off the bat, I can try to give you some really great pointers if you are looking for somebody besides me. That's not going to hurt my feelings. Gottman based, Gottman and his wife basically did 3 longevity studies over 3 decades, basically where they stuck a camera in people's faces, and they kind of, and I'm paraphrasing here, they kind of figured out that they could predict in hindsight, they could show with a 94% accuracy what couples would get divorced by looking at how they interacted in negative conversations. And so there's things that we now know of what puts energy in a relationship and what puts energy out of a relationship. And we can identify very specific patterns within their sound marital house theory that can show us how to get back maybe what we once lost, or sometimes maybe even gain what we never had. And the real solid science there that people need to hear is that as long as you and your spouse, or you and your mate, you and your significant other, believe that the other one is worthy of kindness and consideration, then it's never too late. And that really is a hopeful message I want to make sure that you hear right here. So Gottman, emotional couples focused therapy. This is where we're really kind of looking at attachment style, and we're looking at, how did you learn to love yourself before 10 years old? And there's very specific patterns of how a lot of times our past wounds show up, that we can learn how to deal with someone who's had these very specific patterns. There's very specific attachment styles, and there's a lot of science behind this. So, in that can be very helpful right off the bat, dealing with somebody that either borrows from or has a certification in emotion-focused couples therapy. So I also bring to the table coaching training from Tony Robbins, Chloe Madonna's. I borrow a lot from human needs psychology, where we identify really that there are 6 human needs that we're all going to fill. And the question is are we going to fill those needs positively, negatively, or neutrally? And really these understandings, when you take these patterns and you throw them up again on the wall, we start examining, kind of figuring out where you're getting, how you're filling your particular needs. Are you filling it negatively? Are you filling it positively? And is your spouse or your mate a part of that? And to understand these patterns can really empower us to begin making clear, distinctive choices of how we want to show up in our life that can make all the difference in the world really rapidly. But then there's the trauma aspect and the autonomic nervous system reaction, where we explain a very helpful metaphor of masculine energy and feminine energy, and that when we're really truly looking for that spark, you really want that, that attraction that maybe you haven't had in a long time, then you have to understand the patterns that, in order to have that attraction, there has to be a polarity. And a lot of times our past traumas that have created very specific defensive mechanisms within the way that our felt sense of identity shows up has created these patterns to where it really explains why we've attracted the mates that we have, why we experience the suffering sometimes that we have as well, and how we can take responsibility for that 100% ourselves to do the work that's necessary in order for us to flow into our authentic selves, where we begin attracting truly what it is that we want, not just maybe from a new relationship, but within an existing relationship also. And men, this is where we talk about how to step into your life and really access the power of masculine energy. And for women, it really is, how do you maybe let go some of those defensive mechanisms and step into the full power of authentic feminine energy also, which is, the flower petal to the storm and everything in between. It's magnificent, and real authentic masculine energy is intoxicated, by that energy. There's so much we can talk about. Take a look at some of the online courses that we're going to be excited to offer in the next year if they're not already up as well. If we can answer any questions for you about your relationship, please inquire, and we will get back to you. And again, in the way that we offer either counseling or coaching, if we can't make a match, or with the pricing that we do, make sure that we will try to send you in the right direction with the people that we know that are trained in some of these modalities where it does make a difference. It truly does make a difference in your success in your relationship. So I hope this has been instructional. I gave you a lot of information really quickly. Give us questions if there's more inquiry. We'll be happy to help. Take care, guys.